Pablo Escobar. Just the name itself brings up these images of, incredible wealth, absolute power, and a kind of terror that literally brought an entire country to its knees. So today, we're going to trace the rise and fall of maybe the most infamous drug lord in history, from the streets of Colombia to the very top of a global criminal empire. And we'll explore the incredibly violent story of how it all came crashing down. Okay, to really get your head around the scale of his operation, you have to start with this number: $30 billion. At his peak, that was his estimated personal fortune. And look, this wasn't just a lot of drug money. This was a level of wealth that made him one of the richest men on the entire planet. This number right here, this is the engine that powered the whole story of violence and ambition.
So where did it all begin? Well, it wasn't in some mansion. It was in the poor neighborhoods of Medellín, Colombia. This is kind of that classic story of a rise from nothing, right? But with a uniquely violent twist. Escobar's ambition was clear right from the start. Born in 1949, he quickly went from small-time teenage crimes to something way, way bigger. Then, in the early 1970s, as cocaine demand just exploded in the US, he saw his opening. He jumped into the trade, and that one decision would change not only his life, but pretty much the course of history for all of Colombia.
Okay, so this is where the story really takes off. Escobar didn't just get into the cocaine business, he completely mastered it. He built the infamous Medellín Cartel and became the undisputed king of a global empire.
Let's just pause on that for a second. Millions of dollars, every single day. The Medellín Cartel controlled a massive chunk of the cocaine coming into the US. We're talking tons of it smuggled every week. The amount of cash flowing in was so huge, it's almost impossible to really picture it. He literally had so much cash, he had to start burying it in the ground.
And here's where we get to the core contradiction of Pablo Escobar. Because on one hand, yeah, he's smuggling tons of cocaine, but on the other, he was building this kind of Robin Hood image at home. He spent millions building houses, schools, and soccer fields for the poor in Medellín. In places the government had basically forgotten, he became a savior. And that earned him a loyalty that was almost unbreakable.
And this desire for legitimacy, it was real. In 1982, he actually used all that popular support to get elected to Colombia's Congress. He wanted respect, but when his criminal life was exposed for everyone to see, he was forced out. And that humiliation, that was the trigger. That's the moment Pablo the philanthropist kinda died and Pablo the narco-terrorist was truly born.
So, getting kicked out of politics didn't make Escobar back down. Oh no, it made him retaliate. He declared an all-out war on the state of Colombia, and that plunged the country into one of the most violent chapters in its entire history.
So, what does a guy with basically unlimited money do when he feels cornered? He lashes out with just unimaginable brutality. His goal was simple: use terror to force the government to its knees. And this was the big one: at all costs avoid being extradited to the United States. His campaign of terror was systematic, and it was everywhere. Car bombs became a daily fear in the cities. He offered cash bounties for killing police officers. He assassinated judges, journalists, presidential candidates, really anyone who dared to stand in his way. Thousands and thousands of innocent people were killed in the crossfire of this narco war.
And if you need just one event to understand his absolute ruthlessness, this is it. In an attempt to kill a single political candidate, he had a bomb put on a commercial airplane. The thing is, the candidate wasn't even on the flight, but over 100 innocent people were. This one act just showed the world there were no lines he wouldn't cross.
Eventually, the pressure just became too much. But the beginning of Escobar's end wasn't some dramatic capture. Nope. It was one of the strangest surrenders in criminal history, and it led to one of the biggest manhunts the world had ever seen.
So in 1991, Escobar strikes this wild deal. He'd surrender, but only if he could avoid being sent to the US and if he could serve his time in a prison he designed himself. The result was La Catedral, or the cathedral. And believe me, the word prison is doing a lot of work here. It was basically a luxury resort. I mean, it had a football field, a bar, and he kept running his multi-billion-dollar cocaine empire from inside its walls. So when the government finally decided, okay, this is ridiculous, and tried to move him to a real prison in 1992, he just walked out. And that's what triggered the massive manhunt.
After he escaped, that was it. The gloves were off. The Colombian government formed a special police unit, the Search Block, whose only job was to find him. They had support from US intelligence and even rival drug cartels who wanted Escobar gone for good. He was now, without a doubt,
the most wanted man in the world.
For months, Escobar was on the run, just constantly moving. But on December 2nd, 1993, just one day after his 44th birthday, the search block tracked him down to a middle-class neighborhood in Medellín. He tried to escape across the rooftops, but this time, there was just no way out. A gunfight broke out, and Pablo Escobar was shot and killed. The reign of the cocaine king was over.
His death definitely marked the end of an era, but his story, well, it was far from over. The legacy he left behind is messy, it's bloody, and it continues to haunt Colombia and fascinate the world to this day.
But how is a man like this even remembered? Well, the answer really depends on who you ask. For the world and for most of Colombia, he's a ruthless terrorist who was responsible for just unimaginable suffering. But in some of those poor communities he built up, he's still seen as a folk hero, the man who gave them homes and dignity when the state wouldn't. It's a deeply and bloodily divided legacy.
Ultimately, I think his story is just a stark reminder of this one truth. He built an empire of fear and money. He ruled like a king, and he left a permanent scar on history. But in the end, the very same violence he used to build all that power was exactly what destroyed him.
And that leaves us with one final, kind of unsettling question. It's been decades since he died, but his life has been turned into this myth in books, movies, huge TV shows. The real story is over, but our fascination with him clearly isn't. So we have to ask ourselves, why do figures built on such brutal violence continue to capture our collective imagination?